Hello everyone and welcome to an ESO build video. Today we are covering my personal take on the Stamina Necromancer, and my god has it gotten buffed in the last patch. It is a blast by comparison to last. So with that out of the way, let's just get into it. First things first, I just want to go over it. The stats are going to be a little inflated on the recovery front. That is because I forgot to change this back to the Warrior Mundus Stone. I was testing out some other monster sets and needed this to make up for some missing recovery, but normally I instead run about 1600 stam recovery, 1700. So just to let you know that that is a little inflated. Normally this is the Warrior Mundus Stone. But besides that, we got 25,000 health, 30,000 max stam, nearly 12k max magicka, though you really don't need much from this pool. Our unbuffed weapon damage is 3,359. Our unbuffed resistances are 17k apiece, which isn't all that high, but it's serviceable, I would say. And yeah, I mean, there's not too much else to look in here, I don't think. Battle Spirit is obviously on because we're in Cyrodiil right now. We are a stage 4 vampire. You don't have to be if you don't want to. I just am because, honestly, Stamcrow is like the tankiest class in the game. And I haven't really been noticing the drawbacks of vampirism all that much. On the other hand, the extra 10% recovery seems to go a long way. So, you know, take it or leave it. It's personal preference. If you don't like being a vampire, don't worry about it. I just been using it recently and I've been having a blast with it. Last up on the thing, since I figure I can just cover this now, the food buff we are running is Lava Foot Soup and Sultries. It gives max stam and stam recovery. It does not give health. I really like this food buff. Necromancer has an extra health, plus I'm a race that gives extra health. Those two things combined, you really don't need the max health from a food. But nearly 500 stam recovery, on the other hand, from one food buff is pretty damn nice, if I do say so myself. So, again, this is kind of a dealer's choice thing. If you don't want to run this food, then you can definitely get away with our Tandem Takeaway Broth. That's another good option. Gives you some recovery, not as much. Gives you less stam, but also gives you some health if you're not comfortable running this low on health. But if you are comfortable running a low health build, I highly recommend the Lava Foot. So, first thing we're going to cover is the skills on this one. And we're going to be starting off with Dizzying Swing. Go figure. Dizzying Swing is like my favorite skill in the game. I use it constantly. You can probably assume every stand build I have will be using this skill. But, aside from that, it stuns once every... Due to the off-balance changes of this patch, Dizzying Swing only stuns about once every 20 seconds or so. This is because off balance has a 15-second downtime, and odds are you're not getting a second stun off in the time frame. However, whenever you smack someone who is off balance, you do apply a snare to them now. You also will stun them if they are off balance. So, first swing sets them off balance. Second swing stuns them. And then every swing after they become immune to off balance will snare them for 40%. After they're no longer immune, you can set them off balance again, you can stun them again. But like I said, you really only get about a stun every 25 seconds with this. So if you're not comfortable running that, I would personally add either the Fighters Guild Fear here, or I would add Reverb to my back bar. But I currently haven't had a single problem just running just a straight Dizzying Swing on this. It's been fine so far for me. Second up on the bar is Blighted Blast Bones, and yet another big change. Blast Bones is no longer Drunk Bones. So instead of it going off and staring at a wall for half an hour, it will actually reliably jump to your target and kill them. Reliably. It almost never fails to go off. It usually takes about 2-3 seconds to land, but it's reliable, unless if it gets stunned. That's the only time I've had trouble with it. So, Necromancers rejoice. Blast Bones is now a actually consistent DPS skill. Thirdly on the bar, we are running Camouflage Hunter. So, the reason I'm running this is, one, Fighters Guild passives gives you a little extra weapon damage. Not really relevant, but it's nice. Major Savagery, again, is another really nice buff. And my potions do not provide it. And thirdly, if we crit someone while on the enemy's flank, which is basically anything that's not in the 90-degree cone in front of them, it will give me Minor Berserk for 5 seconds, which increases my damage done by 8%. Now, your first dizzying swing won't likely benefit from this. Your second dizzying swing might, but your blast bones and ulti dump after the stun 100% will, because you're gonna slap him in the back with this and get that minor berserk. So it is a big damage buff. Now, that being said, if you don't want to run this, or if you're covering minor berserk with your potion, not minor berserk, major savagery with your potions, you could also run detonating siphon. That's just a good flat 3% damage buff and an extra 10% crit chance when they're below 25% health. So if you don't want to run this, run detonating siphon. At least that's what I would do. Next up is Executioner, and I think pretty much everyone who plays Stab knows how this works at this point. It's just your bread and butter execute, does a ton of damage when they're low health. You can run the other morph if you want, but I've always had better luck killing the target I was aiming for rather than getting the splash damage. I would much rather the higher damage on a single target. Rally is the final normal skill on this bar, and again, pretty self-explanatory. You need to run this or forward momentum. You gotta run one of the two, because Necromancer does not have a source of major brutality in their kit. However, the reason I run Rally is because, one, I'm using another snare immunity source, and two, Necromancer has no healing buffs at all. They have a lot of damage mitigation, but no real healing buffs. So what I wanted to do with this when I ran this was I decided I wanted as much sources of healing as I could get. So we have Rally, Vigor, and Mender. That's why I run Rally. You just need the extra heal. I don't think I'd replace this. I really prefer Rally to forward momentum on this character. I can't really see a way I would change it. If you could find another source of healing, that would be probably the only way I'd give it up. Alright. Lastly on the front bar, though, is Pestilent Colossus. Good God, is this thing my favorite ultimate in the game. I love it so much. It's just so cool. It's flashy. It does a ton of damage. And it applies major vulnerability for 8 seconds to the enemy. 30% increased damage taken. This is your bread and butter. I'm going to kill you. This is how this works. You just drop it on their heads, you beat them up with dizzying swing, you drop the blast ones on them, and usually you'll just outright kill them. It does so much damage. It enables so much damage. Alright, back bar. We are running Summoner's Armor. You can run the other morph if you want. The only reason I don't is because I used to not like it screwing up my stuns. That being said, with dizzying swing changed the way it is, it might be worth trying out the other morph that stuns people occasionally. I might give that a shot in the future, but for now, Summoner's Armor's been serving me just fine. Mortal Coil. Now, you have two options for this one. You can either run Dead in Pain or Mortal Coil. Mortal Coil gives you stamina and healing. Dead in Pain gives you healing, a smaller amount of healing, I should say, and spotty major protection uptime. Both work well for me. Personally, in non-CP especially, I prefer Mortal Coil, as you just don't have the same block costs that you do in a CP campaign. But inside of a CP campaign, these two, I've alternated them, no problem. Both work great. So dealer's choice there. Next up is Vigor. Again, anyone who's ever played Stamina pretty much knows what Resolving Vigor is. It's a really good heal. You know, you need this on your bars. Fourth is Race Against Time, and why are we running this over Shuffle? Well, one, Major Expedition. Actually, that is the main reason right there, is Major Expedition. Having a source of Major Expedition in this game is fantastic. It allows you to kite people out so much easier. On top of that, this skill gives snare immunity for 2 seconds, and just as a little cherry on top, it gives crit damage increased by 10%. Just further buffing the amount of damage we have. If I were to replace this, though, I would run Shuffle. That would be my alternative. I personally prefer Race Against Time, though. Next up is Spirit Guardian. And Spirit Guardian gives you what's called a negligible heal at best. The heal itself isn't really relevant, but what is relevant is 10% damage mitigation for just having this thing up. Flat 10% damage mitigation, and on top of that, because it is your only pet in this build, it also, I believe it's in one of these. There it is. Increase your magic and stamina recovery by 200 while you have the pet up. Very, very good skill. You have to have a pet from your kit somewhere, whether it be the damage pet or the spirit guardian. But because the damage pet is honestly not all that good right now, I drastically prefer the spirit guardian. And the final skill on our back bar is Temporal Guard. Reasoning behind this, minor protection, more damage modifiers. Necromancer's full of them. They have a lot of different sources of mitigation, and this just adds to it. So I highly recommend Temporal Guard. You could also try out Ravenous Goliath here if you wanted to, or if you're a vampire, you could use the Vampire Draining Ultimate. You could use the Sword and Board Ultimate here. Basically, just pick your favorite defensive ultimate and dump it on this bar. That is my #1 recommendation. Yeah, so that's all the skills. There's really nothing else we need to talk about in the skills. Oh, and you can run Onslaught if you want to. I forgot to add that. You can run Onslaught if you want to. I don't like... The only reason I do not run Onslaught is because I personally don't like the ultimate. It is objectively a very good one. I just don't like it. Alright, so on to the gear. And for the gear, we are running 2-piece Bloodspawn, both in heavy, both in sturdy. We are running 5-piece Essence Thief, which, for those of you who don't know what Essence Thief is, it's basically whenever you light attack someone or heavy attack them, you're going to draw this little orb from them that goes and floats on the ground and gives you a little beacon of light. If you step in that light, you restore nearly 4,000 health, 4,000 stamina, and for the next 10 seconds, your damage is buffed by 10%. This can occur every 10 seconds. So basically, you can reliably have 80 to 90% uptime on this set. You're restoring about 4,000 stam every 12 seconds, give or take. You know, adding in time for the, you know, to go actually get the orb. It's a lot of stamina sustain. It's a lot of damage. It's a really good set, and I honestly regret not farming it sooner. This has become my favorite stamina set in the game. Last but not least, we are running Clever Alchemist. Actually, I should say not last, but we are running Clever Alchemist. We are only running this on the front bar, and we are doing a Nirnhone Maul and a bunch of infused jewelry. Doesn't matter, by the way, where you put the Essence Thief, so long as you have Essence Thief active on both bars and Clever on only one bar. Doesn't matter where you put the rest of it. But we are running 4 pieces of Sturdy on the gear. And 3 Impen, sorry. So, like I said, Clever Alchemist on the front bar, Essence Thief on the body, Bloodspawn. And then on our back bar, we are running 2-piece Potentates for that extra 5% damage reduction. Again, if you can stack a lot of damage modifiers and a lot of damage reduction on this class, it's a gold mine. It honestly is. So we are running Sturdy on the shield, bringing us all the way up to 5 Sturdy traits total when we're on our back bar. And we are running a charged shock dagger of the Potentates. The one-hand weapon does not matter. It does not matter for sword and board. However, the trait does. Either choose charged or defending, in my opinion. Defending will get you extra resistances, and charge will increase the rate you proc status effects. Now, the status effects you have at your disposal, thanks to being a Necromancer, is the disease status effect, and due to the glyph I've chosen, the shock status effect. Now, what do these do? Disease is minor defile, which is a great debuff to stack with the fact that it says you already have major defile off of Blast Bones. And shock is minor vulnerability, which is another 8% damage done. So that is why I run the shock glyph. Another glyph you could try is the frost glyph if you wanted to go minor maim. That's another good status effect you get your hands on. All right, so alternative sets. This is a setting a spot I just wanted to do here. Instead of Bloodspawn, you can try a couple sets. Personally, this is the one that's worked best for me, but I have tried Mulad Kenna here, and that was really good if you can get past the clunky activation of it. Mulad Kenna is super good. Thurvakun. I haven't gotten a chance to test this one yet, but I've seen it used on other classes of similar builds, and Thurvakun is god tier. If you could get it, I would highly recommend trying it. Any other monster sets off the top of my head? Maybe a damage set if you want to. You could try Celine's or something if you want to have some fun. But point being, the monster set for a Necromancer isn't really all that important. The main reason I run Bloodspawn is because when in doubt, run Bloodspawn. That's really the only reason. Alternatives to Essence Thief. You could go maybe Bone Pirate Tathers, though you'd have to change your food buff. I used to run Fury, believe it or not. I used to run Clever Fury instead, and that worked pretty well too. This worked better. I think that's about all I have for alternatives in the set. There's not a lot of good alternatives for this. However, Clever Alchemist, that's a different story. See, if you don't want to run Clever Alchemist, then you pretty much have the next best option is New Moon Acolyte. And actually, New Moon Acolyte is not necessarily a second place. The two sets are very similar. They have a lot of damage output. I would personally choose Clever Alchemist or New Moon Acolyte. The reason Clever Alchemist won over on this build is because of the extra 2,000 health. Because I'm not running a health-giving food buff, this helps out quite a bit. But should you not want to run this, feel free to run New Moon Acolyte. Maybe change your food buff up a little bit, run a different one. And yeah, besides that, we have 3 infused weapon damage. Let me go through all the enchantments real quick because I didn't do that before. All prismatic on the gear, Berserker on the front bar, Shock on the back, Stamina on the shield, 3 infused weapon damage glyphs on the jewelry. And I believe that is what we got for the gear. So the main potion I use on this setup is Essence of Health, tri-stat potions. And the reason I run this is just because I use Rat a lot. I cast this a lot during fights, so I burn through my mag pool. If you're running Shuffle, you probably don't need tripods, and can run any other potion of your choosing. But because I spam Rat a lot, I need a lot of mag sustain to run it. I think we're just gonna roll through the last couple little details before we hit the CP, and that is, like I said, we are a vampire. It is not mandatory if you don't want it. You can choose this if you want. You don't have to run it if you don't. We are a Nord. This one, in my opinion, is probably the best race for Necromancer. The class lends itself to that tanky burst playstyle really well, and Nords just play into that with that extra like 4.5k resist they have. It's pretty damn good. On top of that, they do have an extra 1,000 health. They do have an extra 1,500 stamina, and they do have a bit of extra ult gen. So, in my opinion, Nords work probably the best for this class. That being said, if I was to pick a different race, I would pick Orc or Imperial. Partially because both of those two races have extra health. Orc having 1,000 and Imperial having 2,000, which means Imperial having the highest health out of the 3. Orc is the damage option, Imperial is the sustain option, and Nord is the tanky option. That's kind of how you got to pick this. If you do not want to play a brawler race, at that point, I would probably say pick maybe a Wood Elf or pick maybe... yeah, honestly, probably like a Wood Elf, a Dark Elf. Just pick whatever other race you want, but you'd have to get more health. You'd have to change your food buff. If you do not run a race that gives you max health, you're gonna have to change your food buff. And yeah, so I think that covers it for all the gear, the skills, the race, and all that. So last thing we're gonna do is the CP before we log out of here. Starting with blue, we got nothing in this tree. 81 into Master at Arms. 56 into Precise Strikes. 58 into Piercing. 75 into Mighty. We're basically just pushing all burst if you haven't guessed already. 72 into Ironclad, 48 into Resistant, 37 Thick-Skinned. The reason we go low on Thick-Skinned is because Necromancer have 15% dot mitigation already into their kit. You really don't need this. You don't need this. You could probably take CP points out of this and put it elsewhere if you wanted to. 43 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, and then 27 into Quick Recovery to boost our healing down a little bit. Green, we are rocking 56 Warlord, 75 Mooncalf, 27 Tenacity. You can change these around however you like. Personally, this is what's working best for me so far. However, I have played it with 56 here and more into Tenacity, and that has worked too. And then 56 into Shadow Ward and Tumbling. This has become my new even split because going too far into either one of these trees just ends up being too limited return in my opinion. So yeah, guys, there you go. That is the Stamina Necromancer build for the patch. This thing has proven beautiful. Even when I was running the less tanky option, I was running Mulad Kenna and not running Bloodspawn. I was tanking out 8 people, no problem. Honestly, this build has impressed the hell out of me. If you find that it is a little too squishy, like I said, change the food buff to something that gives you health. A lot of the squishiness comes from the fact that you just have really low health on this build. Another thing you could do, because this is such a damage modifier heavy build and it's less reliant on its raw stats, you could run this in heavy armor. You definitely could run this in heavy armor. I personally prefer medium because I like the movement medium has, but if, again, you're feeling squishy and you want to try something else out, try rotating the pieces around and get some heavy armor in here. It'll probably make a big difference. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, have a good one, guys.